grain.
I was obsessed with trash. Here I go mentally ill. Doritos bags look mad different.
Make out with girls.
Shyness is nice, and shyness can stop you from doing all the things in life you'd like to.
The movie's trash.
I love the fucking Ion pattern.
Shyness is nice, and shyness can stop you from doing all the things in life you'd like to.
You guys are like my best friends.
We love the Ion pattern.
The internet straight didn't exist, bro. There's a whole group of guys who pretend to be making special films.
Coyness is nice, and coyness can stop you from saying all the things in life you'd like to.
Oh no.
Wow.
Ion 2 here.
Ion 1 here.
This is our conversation with filmmaker Caveh Zahedi, the greatest artist of our generation.
And in many ways, the most Ion artist that there is.
He is the most ionized artist that there is, even though
Extremely
throughout
ionized.
the conversation, we realized he listened to some of our earlier episodes and said it was just some dudes shooting the shit.
Which it was, but it, you know, he didn't, I don't think he took in the essence of Ion like the Packers did.
But then he said he listened to some more. He listened to some Eugene, some Dasha.
And was about it.
And he was like, damn. I also didn't realize that he knew that I was Ion because I kind of know Caveh in my real life. So that was like, I kind of thought I was surprising him, but he was just like, oh yeah, I know.
Right. Well, because we did a screening with him and film screening too.
Yeah, he did Psychedelics and I, a live performance.
Which, it was a live kind of interactive film that he premiered at Ion's film screening too, which, you know, is how he began a relationship with Ion. But I guess we're going to, for people who don't know who he is, we're going to do this little intro so you can have some context and know a bit more about one of the greatest artists around.
Yeah, he's a filmmaker who has made films A Little Stiff, In the Bathtub of the World, I Don't Hate Las Vegas Anymore, The Sheik and I, more recently The Show About the Show, more famously
I'm a Sex Addict.
I'm a Sex Addict.
I thought you forgot it.
I'm probably missing some other ones in there. Tripping with Caveh, Getting Stoned with Caveh. He's made so much shit. But once you kind of get a taste of it, if you're interested, they kind of all work together as kind of one body of work. I think like when he dies, like it's almost as if like he made one big movie. He was constantly documenting himself throughout. And
yeah, it's like most of his work is about the process of making things and kind of the process of searching for meaning within making art. So if you watch his whole body of work, it's like you're along for the ride with this guy. You're like a part of his life.
And it's very much about like his frustrations with the film industry and the people he meets throughout and like his difficulty in trying to get things made, which also becomes kind of the crux of his work, which is the difficulty of him trying to make things. It becomes a documentation of that struggle.
Yes, and it's even less concrete than that. He's very skilled at kind of taking maybe concrete frustrations and blocks that he has and kind of explaining the philosophical implication of it in a really relatable way.
And with The Show About the Show, he's willing to kind of blow up a lot of his life in this pursuit of like honesty and the pursuit of God and the pursuit of art making. He's willing to kind of let a lot of things fall to pieces in that pursuit, which probably wouldn't do myself, but I admire deeply.
Yeah, because and you know, we talk about this with him, so I'm not going to go too far into it, but for someone who gets criticized as being self-involved, it really, his work is way less self-involved than a lot of artists to me, because he will do anything in pursuit of the art. The work really does come first, and he'll let anything happen to make something meaningful.
We should also say, because it didn't get mentioned in the episode, that the idea of boyhood kind of came out of his relationship with Richard Linklater. because it is a very Caveh idea to kind of do a duration piece of filming things over time, which is something that Caveh actually does. I wish I had brought this up to him.
Yeah, I made a note to bring it up and forgot.
He films himself for like every hour of the day of his birthday, every year of his life. Like this kind of durational, like coming back to something. Like that idea was something he's friends with Richard Linklater. Like he's very familiar with his work, and I think he kind of made that pop for everybody with Boyhood.
Yeah, and speaking of Richard Linklater, if you don't know Caveh, maybe you do if you've seen Waking Life.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's the holy moment segment of Waking Life, which is a great part of that movie. The last thing I want to say before we get into the episode is that he really is an inspiration, and I think he is sort of like the nucleus of the Ion Way, and he kind of has been from the beginning, in the sense that he has always kind of been an outsider to an industry and to an art form, and sort of like the cool club of that art form that he tries to be a part of, and a lot of his frustrations and the people that he has encountered in New York and just in the film world is something that he actually, as a person, introduced me to when I first moved to New York, and that I sort of had similar experiences to him with, just in terms of people's egos getting in the way and their success sort of masking their friendship or getting in the way of friendship. And I don't know, just his view of people in this world is something that I think had a profound impact on me and kind of probably gave birth to a lot of the spirit of early Ion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something extremely. I think that his worldview and the kind of his spirituality and the esteem in which he holds art is really something to admire, and something that I would encourage anyone listening to this to examine within themselves and try to take influence from his perspective.
And I think we should give credit to some of like our philosophical musings and just like maybe views on spirituality, and like a lot of that, at least for me personally, comes from him. Like he's sort of like been a father figure to me creatively and emotionally through my time in New York. So we're really glad we got to do this one.
And it was heat.
It was fucking heat.
It was really all heat.
It was fucking heat.
It was like instantly heat, which isn't always the case with an Ion pod.
Definitely not.
Sometimes it's like a slow climb to heat.
Yeah.
This, I think, was like full heat off the bat.
Yeah. No, it was.
I think it was. I mean,
no, it definitely was.
We'll let you, the listener, be the judge.
I'd actually love to have him back.
I mean, absolutely.
Give him a good reception.
You already know.
You already know. Big shouts.
Big shouts.
All right, so we've got Caveh Zahedi on the podcast.
Caveh, welcome to the pod.
Hello.
This has been the one we've been looking forward to. I got to take this off.
Yeah, go ahead.
We've been looking forward to this for a while.
And the Packers have been too.
Yeah, the people who listen to the podcast or have been following us have been
really wanting this one.
Fans of yours via our prodding. I think we talk about you a lot. We talk about your films a lot, but without actually having your voice be a part of it. So
This is a loud street, huh?
it is pretty loud.
Right. Well, usually we don't. We're not here during the day, so I kind of.
Yeah, we've only ever done these at night.
Do you know what your numbers are on the podcast?
What our numbers are?
I don't know. Actually, not really. Now that it's Patreon, I don't really know. I know when.
Oh, you know what your Patreon numbers are, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some people listening.
Okay.
We didn't really want to do it at first, but people, picked up on it, and we've been really enjoying your daily podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, a lot. Which maybe you should plug in case people listening don't know it.
I can't plug things.
Caveh's got a new podcast where he releases a short episode every day of this year, 2021. That's sort of like a different story from his life. It's very, very classic Caveh format. Little insights and maxims and lessons to be learned.
Maxims. Oh, good.
Yeah, like they're like fables.
Yeah.
That's what they feel like.
There's a Frank Black song. He says, "Some say it's the truth, some say it's a fable." Do you know that song?
Is
Oh.
it
Oh,
Pixies
yeah.
or Frank Solo?
Solo.
Yeah.
Oh, Black Dawning.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some actually. Your new podcast led me to an old podcast of yours, the Awkward Celebrity Encounters, which I hadn't listened to in a while. And there was one thing that I definitely wanted to bring up, which was the Stan Brakhage episode.
Oh yeah.
And you mentioned kind of like a tussle or a fight you had with Jonas Mekas about something, and you kind of lashing out maybe over email to Stan Brakhage about.
This was before email.
Or yeah, it was like a
letter.
letter.
With a
Oh wow,
stamp.
yeah. But you say something to the effect of, you guys are like the mafia. Like there's like you guys are like Hollywood too. Like there's like an inclusiveness or like a Hollywoodness to this experimental film world, which was something that like maybe we connected to, or like we kind of notice a lot about the
definitely.
film world.
Oh, like in a bad way.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, because I feel like maybe the kind of power structures behind, Hollywood or anything on a larger, more mainstream scale are kind of maybe inherently human. So as soon as you get any kind of group of people in any kind of way, they just kind of replicate. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with myself.
I mean, have you experienced that just even in like the insular, like New York film world?
Yeah. I mean, I was in San Francisco before for 10 years, and that had its own scene and its own kind of like insularness. And it was kind of like a small pond, and it was just small enough that you would get mad at everybody in the pond at a certain point,
Yeah.
and feel really mad and angry and bitter. And what I like about New York is it's just a bigger pond. So if you get mad at a bunch of people,
Right.
there's other places you can go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can make other friend groups. But yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always like, the person right above you is the one you kind of envy and detest.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are people who feel that way about me, they want to like get in with me and my crowd. I mean, I don't think I have a crowd, but I think people probably think I do.
I think you do. I mean, I've recognized that like we've met a lot of people in New York, and when you find the people that know Caveh or like know the show about the show, maybe as an entrance point, like everyone is obsessed. Like everyone's seen most of your movies. Like there's very few people like they either know you or they don't, basically. And I have noticed a trend in like younger people being attracted to your work. Have you felt that?
Yeah, for sure. But when you say crowd, you mean like people who like my work, not people who hang out with me.
Well, I think there's like a scene associated with the Caveh world that maybe might not be like your crowd. Maybe it's not like friend group or something, but
People who are influenced by Caveh, you mean?
yeah.
It's like a lifestyle.
Well, we were talking to Tom Krell, How to Dress Well, and like we were surprised like he knew your work and was like obsessed with your work, and that was really cool because like he's a musician that we grew up like listening to, and he's like a Caveh head, which I was like, that's so cool. It makes sense. It's usually people who are kind of like philosophically engaged on some level in art, or have like this obsessive tendency to want to make art. People who are into your stuff are not casual lovers of art. They're people who are obsessive.
Yeah, and people who I think you kind of, maybe not the right word, but empower people. You make people feel like they feel more comfortable being, fanboys and really kind of obsessing and wanting to get to the root of what makes the things they love lovable. It makes people feel like they have to put less of a kind of too cool for school air on.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great thing, and that's something we talk about a lot. Especially we've learned from talking to people doing this podcast that I think it's most people probably don't want to have that kind of ironic distance from things, but they feel subconsciously like they should, and it's actually quite easy to break it down in someone by just not being like that. Yeah. And then when you start not being like that, people open up very easily, and it's really kind of amazing. And my point being is I think that your work brings that out in people pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, that's kind of the point of the work.
Right. And do you find that happens when you're actually engaging with people on a personal level too? Because you're very kind of upfront when you meet someone who you admire or just someone else who makes art.
It's snowing.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
I think I'm probably more defended and scared and uptight in person than in my films. You know, like I think,
Right.
I mean, I aspire to that quality that's in my films, but I think, I don't know. I think most people, when they meet me, they don't feel loved by me as a person, but they feel loved by the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Have you, what do you think,
Do it.
what do you think causes that?
Oh, just like, I don't know, I guess I'm just shy.
Right.
You know, like when you meet somebody, you're engaged in a kind of very complex dance,
Mm-hmm.
and you're worrying about what they're thinking about you, and what they're thinking that you're thinking about them,
Mm-hmm.
and it just gets very like you're implicated in it in a way that sort of is a little paralyzing and a little complicated. Whereas when you make a film or a performance, you can really just, you're not having to deal with that dimension of that.
Right.
It's just it's abstracted, and it's, I don't know, it's
It's not two-way.
yeah, it's one way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's why people like movies, is because it's one way,
Mm-hmm.
and they can just don't have to worry about how the film. They don't have to, like at a party, you're worried about the person thinks of you. In a movie, you're not worried about what the movie thinks of you.
Yeah.
So you can just sort of surrender and open up and just like let it in. You can be receptive.
Right.
Whereas people, like I'm not usually receptive when I meet somebody,
Right.
and I mean, I wish I was. You know, if I'm on drugs, I might be, but you know, usually I'm just I got my insecurities or thoughts or whatever.
Right. Do you think your work in particular maybe holds a mirror up to the viewer more than most? Is that a goal of yours?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would hope so. I mean, I think in the absence of other qualities in my work,
Yeah.
that would be the one.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, something I think is interesting about your films is that they're almost, or the kind of visual aspect of them is maybe not even in the forefront.
It's far down the list.
Yeah, it feels more like that's why your podcast is interesting, because how much that medium works for you as something that's a completely not visual medium.
Right.
But I really think you are kind of maybe more of a storyteller than even a filmmaker, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Unfortunately.
Well, I don't think it's unfortunate at all. I think it's what makes people connect with what you do in a different way than even other kind of personal documentary films.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that term storyteller, gets a lot of overuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it's almost nauseating as a term now. But
Maybe not the best term, but
I think it is a key thing. I mean, it's like, I really think that what we are is stories.
Yeah.
We're stories we tell ourselves, and we're stories we tell other people about ourselves or about the world around them. And everyone just has these like narratives in their minds that are pretty unexamined.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's this thing called narrative therapy. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's basically therapy, but the whole idea is like to sort of deconstruct the stories that you're telling yourself about stuff. And it's almost every problem. This guy, Bill McKibben, is that his name? The designer? He says every problem in the world is a design problem. Like you could fix everything if you just redesigned it so that things flowed in the right direction.
Right.
Right.
Like he says, for example, like playgrounds, like the kids like lick the rubber on the playgrounds, and it's got toxins in it because it's made out of rubber or whatever, industrial rubber.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, what if we made them out of like vitamins? Then they could lick the playground and they would get nutrition. It's like a design flaw.
Right. So the problem is not them licking it.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to lick it no matter what. just don't put toxic chemicals where their tongues are,
Yeah.
you know? And in the same way, what was I talking about?
You're talking about like the narrative therapy.
Oh, yeah. Almost every problem you're having, I find, is a problem of a story you're telling yourself that's actually inaccurate.
Right.
And makes you feel bad about yourself.
Right.
And it's, some story about, someone hates me or failure or whatever the story is. It's just not true.
Yeah.
And so that whole therapy is just like, let's look at the story that's causing you suffering and let's see where it's not true, where we could just change one little part of the story and suddenly you're fine, And it's often like, this is what's nice about thought is it's just a thought. Everything is a thought.
Yeah.
And you have this different thought, like just one thought changes. And this is what's great about art. Like sometimes you just have one idea. I once saw this movie by Yvonne Rainier, and I think it was called Privilege. I didn't love this movie or anything, but in it, somebody said this sentence, which was, artists are resourceful. And I just was like, oh yeah, artists are resourceful. That's what they are. And then suddenly it was like, okay, if I have a problem, I'm an artist, I can just be resourceful. Like it just unblocked something in me that was very helpful.
Right.
And just like so much of art is just like you get a thought from it that you didn't have before. And that thought just makes your life better.
Right.
So in that sense, I'm a storyteller, sure, but everyone is. And I guess I'm just maybe telling a story of freedom from guilt.
Yeah.
That is healing and takes the pressure off that we all give ourselves, including me.
Right. Well, so if you're defining art in that way, then it sounds like you're very successful, even though you're someone who is very critical of yourself and talks about your failures a lot. If you're trying to give someone something, and that's the kind of goal of the film, then wouldn't you say that your films are huge successes?
Well, I wouldn't say that, but a lot of people don't accept the gift.
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't like your gift. I don't want your gift. Your wrapping paper is ugly, and no, thank you.
Right.
I think an interesting thing to talk about in terms, like you're saying maybe you're not a filmmaker, because I'm very attracted to your first movie, A Little Stiff, and you're like that. I'm always interested in people's first works because it feels like the most raw, or maybe like the most unsure. Like there's the mistakes or the parts that aren't perfect feel interesting to me. And that's a narrative. I mean, it's based off of your life or an experience you had. But it's interesting to me because I think after that you veered into what your style is now. And I know that you have aspirations to make movies that maybe aren't like that. I was curious where you're at with like if you want to make a fiction feature again, or
I do. I'm still trying. I'm always trying. I just, I as I get older or whatever, like I've noticed that it's like it's so easy to get like discouraged by rejection or by indifference.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to get sidetracked. Even like if I don't work on something for like a day, I just have no connection to it anymore. I was like, what was that project I was working on yesterday that I thought was so great? I don't even know what it's called anymore. So there is a kind of like momentum element and also a collaborative element. Like if there are people who are saying, Caveh, when are you going to turn this in, or, hurry up, then I'm just feel, I don't know, motivated.
Yeah.
Right.
Otherwise I just get sideswiped by every demand.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's why it's easy. Like once you have a kind of fan base, in my mind, it's probably easier to just get to work faster if there's more of a demand.
Yeah, probably.
I think there's a demand on the show. Like I think people are like, when's the new season of the show?
The show about the show?
Yeah.
Yeah, although, Aziz quit Brick.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so they're not funding season 3.
Oh, so it's where's it
It
at?
has no home. So
Right.
it's an orphan show now.
Right.
And I'm looking for a home for it, but in the absence of a home, I'm just kind of not quite as motivated to work on it.
But it's you've finished it, or like it exists, or no, or you have to shoot it, you have to do everything.
I mean, I've been working on it for over a year,
Right.
but there's still at least a year
Left.
of work to do.
Right.
And, each day, I decide I'm going to work on this or these other projects that are also competing for my attention.
Right.
And I end up working on the ones that there are other people involved in.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where the motivation comes, is when there's,
Yeah.
the momentum is so much of it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's healthy to just kind of follow that momentum, or should you?
I do.
Yeah.
I
So
think
do
I think that's kind of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's God speaking to you.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, us doing this pod is something that we didn't want to do.
Yeah.
But then it kind of had a reaction, which then motivated me to work more on it, because I liked that it was doing something for people that weren't myself. And then it made everything else I do feel more, not selfish, but it just was like, I had no audience in mind in comparison, so it felt less rewarding. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Even though there are other things that I do are kind of technically more, I'm more passionate about in some way, but it's different. It's different because your passion kind of shifts with the reaction and the demand, and I do think it's a kind of holy thing. It's I'm following some type of thread that's been laid out for me, or some type of rope that's been thrown to me to like find meaning in some other way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that thread for you has taken you down documentary and into TV, into those sort of films, rather than a narrative drama for a reason?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm exactly where God wants me. Yeah. Which is not where I want me.
Yeah.
So I'm squirming the whole way,
Right.
but it's like, okay,
yeah,
I guess this is where I'm supposed to be right now, talking to you guys.
How did you feel before, just even going into today? Like, did you feel pressure to come, or did you not want to come? Or
Well, I listened to a little bit of it like once a long time ago, and I didn't like it.
Yeah. Which one was it?
I don't remember, but it was just I kind of have this allergy towards what I would reduce to guys hanging out, talking, making jokes in their living room, maybe stoned, maybe drunk.
Right.
There's a genre of podcasts like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was a little bit of that kind of energy in the little bit that I heard.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like eager
Right.
to do it. It didn't feel like my frequency.
Right.
And you sort of kept, badgering me.
Yeah.
And, out of my affection for you.
Yeah.
And, and various things. And kind of COVID gave me an excuse to sort of punt a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the podcast kind of gave me another reason to maybe I should do it, because
Right.
I feel some obligation to try to promote that a little bit.
Yeah.
But then just today, just because it was the first time I had the motivation to listen again,
Right.
I listened to two things, and I like them both. So by the time I walked in here, I was feeling pretty good about it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
We've definitely developed out of just shooting the shit into having realer conversations.
But I do think there is obviously a very casual element, because we're not, journalists or interviewers.
Yeah.
But that's what I like about it, because I would rather hear a conversation. Personally, I would rather hear a conversation between, artists than a kind of very direct, like one-way interview. But
Yeah. But interestingly, like you guys are both, I think, people who aren't or even anti a kind of hipsterism.
Mm-mm.
And yet the podcast felt kind of hipstery to me. So there's like a weird double-edged sword.
We're definitely hipsters. I mean, I am a born and bred hipster since I was a young kid.
yeah.
You look like a hipster.
Yeah.
But
So are you.
I don't think of myself as a hipster.
Well, when you were younger, you definitely were.
I was never a hipster because I was never.
The guy in a little stiff is a hipster.
No, he's not. He's a maladjusted outsider.
Well, that's a hipster sometimes.
But like I always think of hipsters as people who like other people think are cool.
Right.
I was never that.
Well, that's interesting. Maybe it has the veneer of that. I do think of ourselves as people who feel outside of the industries of cool people that we wish we were a part of, but we're not. Like,
Yeah, I 'cause it's interesting to hear you say that, because I've never thought of myself as cool in any way, really.
it's a great reflection though.
Yeah.
It's like, Caveh thought we were hipsters. But like we've always felt like outsiders to the stuff that we love. And I think that connects us to your work because
Yeah.
like in the show about the show, like for example, when you are talking to Jake Perlin at Metrograph about doing a retrospective of your work, like even though like I have no retrospective of work to ask Jake Perlin to show, I relate to the dynamic of you talking to someone who is in some gatekeeping position of power and having them more or less not take you that seriously. Like a hipster, I think, would say, we'll show your film. Like they would show the hipster's film. I think.
Yes, exactly.
Well, because I remember like they just done a Josh Safdie retrospective.
Yeah.
Right? When I asked him that. And I think I'd been introduced to him by Josh. So I was like, maybe by association, I have some cred, but I didn't.
Right.
But Josh did.
Right.
And you know, I don't think of Josh really as a hipster either. He's just like a talented.
Yeah, he's a hustler.
Yeah, that's right.
He's definitely a hustler.
But yeah, you were at Sundance when show played there.
Yeah.
And there was that party. Were you at the party?
I think so. Yeah.
And like Jake Perlin, he was there.
Yeah.
But I just forgot to invite him to the party. And afterwards, he found out about the party, and his feelings were hurt that I didn't invite him to the party. Jake Perlin, yeah, as if you know,
as if you owed him the invitation.
Well,
did you?
I would have gladly invited him. I just didn't think of it.
Yeah.
But just the way that the story in the show is inverted,
right,
at the Sundance episode.
Yeah, no, that's really funny.
I liked that.
Right.
And we can cut this out if you want to, and we'll see if you'd even talk about it. But I always found it interesting that Josh was one of the few people who actually was removed from the narrative of the show about the show. I was like, wow, he's the one person who you really can't talk about.
Yeah, it's true.
What happened?
What happened in there?
Yeah.
Well, so it's all in the show.
Yeah.
It's just that I just don't say who it is.
Yeah. Right.
But you know, he, as a favor, really to her.
Yeah.
And to me, he just said, you know, I know this actress who, you know, is comfortable with nudity. If you're ever looking for someone, she's a good actress and she's available.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, I wasn't looking for anybody. So I just, you know, registered it.
Right.
And then I don't know why I brought that up in the show, but she was like very upset and very upset with him for saying that.
Yeah.
But I thought it was a pretty innocent thing for him to say.
Yeah.
And I thought her upsetness was kind of a little disproportionate to the crime.
Right.
Yeah.
But he was mad at me for basically saying something that made her mad at him.
Right.
And, you know, he seems to have some kind of moral code that is not my moral code, and from which my moral code to him seems immoral.
Right.
You know, and I'm sure I could think of plenty of things that he's done or is doing that I could say the same thing to him about, but I'm not a moralist, you know, so I'm totally fine with his moral code.
Yeah.
But he's not fine with mine, I guess.
Right.
And I just felt like.
But that's what's interesting. And I think you talked about on like this Brick interview about like people can have their own set of ethics. Like that sort of is your ethical worldview, that like people's ideas of what's right and wrong are different. And it's just interesting that you did respect, like he clearly had a problem with something that you were doing, and you respected his code.
Oh, he would say I did not respect his code.
Right.
Because I actually talk about it in the show, and I just blurred his face and didn't use his name.
But you don't mention his name, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just did.
Yeah.
We can take it out if you want.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I think it's good though.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like an absurd thing to be.
We've experienced some of that with Josh as well, which is interesting. It was just interesting that he was like the one person, because like your show is about honesty, and like everyone is subjected to this, like being humiliated through their faults. And I was like, wow, Josh somehow he's the one guy who got out of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's impressive, honestly.
Something that I think is particularly warm about all of your work is that it really, I think if you truly watch these films for what they are, you would be less self-conscious. You me or you,
like anyone?
The viewer would be less self-conscious. To me, your work is like basically showing like, no, look, like, don't you relate to this? See how not a big deal this is? It really is warm in that way to me. And clearly it's maybe not everyone gets that out of it, because people are still kind of afraid of, I don't know, maybe they're afraid of how being honest can affect their career or their friendships or you know, just their perception as an artist, or I don't know. It's interesting because for me, the older I get, the more that kind of breaks down for me, and the more I kind of feel like, who cares? Like if you just are honest, most people are like, oh, I'll do the same thing because we're all pretty similar at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But you have a lot of experiences where people don't reciprocate that.
That's
honesty.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And like there's a moment with Dustin Guy DeFay on the Sundance thing where you're sort of revealing there's like a Chloe Sevigny thing happening, and he's kind of focused on his movie and he doesn't want to give you the lines for your show. Josh doesn't want to be in the show and talked about. There's a thing with Greta Gerwig and one of the awkward celebrity encounters where she was like doing a PhD or a dissertation on you and now won't return your emails. And there's just like this trend of people becoming popular and famous and then not being as interested. And I wondered if you could comment on that experience in the film world.
Well, I mean, it's you know, it's always just demoralizing when someone seems to be your friend or like you, and then they won't talk to you because they're more famous than you are.
Right.
And it makes you wonder what they liked to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
If it's that thin. But I also understand it. Like, it's like everyone feels like they're not good enough. Everyone's not happy with who they are or where they're at.
Yeah.
With their life, a lot in life. And the more you get, almost the more you want. It's almost like inversely proportional.
Right.
Yeah.
And the greedier you get.
Yeah.
And I understand wanting to climb. I mean, I want to climb too.
Yeah.
So, and I understand, like, I don't know, also like Lena Dunham, this also happened with, you know, like I can't get a hold of her.
Yeah.
But, you know, she
loves you.
She did.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say she does anymore, because if she did, you would think there would be certain signs of that.
Yeah.
I mean, her work is very indebted to you, I think, or it feels in the spirit of Caveh.
Yeah, there's something similar on some levels. But like, I don't know, she probably has like, I don't know, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie and Miranda July and Hillary Clinton are all like calling her and saying, hey, do you want to have dinner tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm here sending an email, and just in the hierarchy of desires, it's just low.
Yeah.
You know, and if she was alone waiting to go to the bathroom at a party and it was just me and her, I'm sure we would have a friendly talk.
Yeah.
But there's no room for it. And there are people that I'm like that with too.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, I like you, but not that much.
Right.
And, you know, I'm happy to talk to you if it's not too inconvenient.
Well, do you think there's something wrong with that? Do you think there's something wrong with the climb that maybe disconnects you from people? Not you specifically, but
and not only disconnects you from people, but disconnects you from what you love about art and why you're even doing it. Like, clearly there was something about your work that spoke to these people when they were still, you know, very raw and fresh and figuring out their, you know, voice and what they wanted to do and what they loved about film and all this, that maybe they've forgotten now via success.
I don't know. It's also like, I don't like Morrissey, right? Yeah. There's a guy, he was so connected to like the real deal.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And look what happened to him. And you see it, you can chart it along with his records, you know, Hairdresser's on Fire, still a great song, but it's about your hairdresser, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of about, you know, rejection or, you know, lovesickness.
Yeah.
And then you keep going along and you're like, what is he saying? Like, don't hear the last one. But it's like, stop complaining about killing yourself. Just do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's funny, I guess.
Yeah.
But what happened to the empathy?
Right.
You know, that joke isn't sad anymore.
Right.
Or that joke isn't funny anymore, rather. You know, what happened to that guy?
Yeah.
And I think people just get new concerns and new resentments and new problems.
Yeah.
And I don't know, whatever problems, let's say Greta Gerwig is dealing with now, which I'm sure are complex and evolving, probably aren't addressed by the concerns in my work.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, I don't know, it's just like, it's like an ex-girlfriend. Like you were into her, but now you're not.
Yeah.
Right.
You're into some other stuff now or someone else.
But it almost feels like there is something maybe corrosive about like career obsession, because it's
Yeah.
not work obsession. It's like your place in society or culture. Like I have friends who have made movies that are getting into festivals and stuff, and it's just interesting. It's like I can communicate more with the people who aren't. Like
Right.
the people who are feeling less success are more accessible, and you can have a rich time with them. Whereas these other people are kind of far off. You can't get a hold of them. And it's just interesting. It's not necessarily bad, but sometimes you talk to other people, like, have you heard from this guy? And no one's heard from that guy.
Right.
They're really focused on their thing.
Right. I mean, I don't believe in being moralistic or judgmental. So I don't want to say like, oh, it's bad to be that way. It's actually almost impossible not to be that way.
Yeah.
In our society.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure all those people, Lena, Greta, everybody, I'm sure they're all taking countermeasures in themselves to fight those tendencies and those elements,
Right.
Right.
And, a lot of it's just like, one thing, I'm not very famous, but to the extent that I have sometimes had a little more success, I've noticed how much busier I get.
Yeah.
And how much more stuff is getting thrown at me.
Yeah.
I remember once Alexander Payne, who I know from film school, I was at he had just done Sideways. It was like the biggest movie in the world. And everybody was like, just laying a red carpet in front of him and like bowing down and, kissing his feet.
Yeah.
And I remember I was having dinner with him at a festival in the Czech Republic. And he was just really unhappy and bitter and resentful. And he was like, everybody always wants something. And all I would do is people like, give me this, give me this, give me this. Can you do this for me? And I was just like, Alexander, what are you talking about? You're on top of the world. You're rich. You're
made
famous.
Sideways.
Yeah.
You're loved. And all you can think about is like, people are like trying to take things from you.
Right.
But also, I wasn't in his shoes. I'm sure he's right.
Right.
He must have had 100 fucking requests a day. Could you please watch my movie? Could you please talk at this thing? Could you please do this charity thing? And I can imagine like, it must be really, really hard. And I think even like me, who tries to really like treat everybody like a son of God, and a person as equal to me,
Right.
I end up like not getting back to everybody, not out of, judgment or like hierarchy, but just out of like, I'm just can't keep up.
Right.
And so, and if I don't know, if Joe Biden sent me an email, I probably wouldn't forget to get back to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that you say something you say sometimes is that you think that failure is more spiritualizing than success. And I was just wondering where you're at with that idea now. Because obviously success feels better, but
Yeah, but success just stokes your ego,
yeah.
and it takes you farther from God.
Right. Well,
Failure takes you closer to God.
Yeah.
So
Do you feel like you're where are you right now? Are you in the failure or success?
well, it's always a weird mix. But I think, I don't know, I feel like this is probably just a story I tell myself to feel okay about myself. But I kind of felt like I made a deal with God on some level. And or God made some kind of thing where he's like, I'm not going to let you get successful until you don't need it anymore. And it's not going to like make you an egomaniac.
Right.
And like when you can do that, you can have whatever you want. Until then, no.
yeah.
And so I'm always like, just get to a place where I don't need it anymore, and then it'll happen. And I kind of believe that's true in a way. I mean, I don't know how to explain people who are egomaniacal and successful. I don't know how to explain that. But it seems like there is some kind of inverse law of spirituality
Right.
where you get what you need, and if it's going to like hurt you spiritually, you actually don't get it.
Right.
Right. Well, it's interesting that you talking about bitterness, because I watched Sheik and I, and then I watched I Don't Hate Las Vegas Anymore, and it was interesting to realize that in that entire gap, you still seemed equally the optimist, and you weren't bitter or you didn't even have more of a guard up. Really, you still seemed as 100% kind of in search of some type of sublime through what you were doing, and that goal was never deterred over that entire span. And no matter what, you've been up against in the kind of industry, in that entire span of time, you didn't seem to make you bitter or kill any kind of spark, if you will, which was really interesting to me, because not a lot of people, as we just said, can maintain that kind of hope and spark and a kind of belief in the work over that long of a career.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely suffer from bitterness,
as anyone does, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that someone has said once about The Sheik and I that kind of hurts, because I think it's probably true, is that film is a little bitter.
I didn't think so.
Well, I'm a little mad. Like the tone of that camera dress is a little mad.
Right.
I'm a little indignant.
But you seem indignant and angry at the kind of systems that block things from being as spiritual and fulfilling as they could be. You don't seem kind of like it seems to be a bitterness towards a larger kind of structural societal problem, not even something within the film industry or the art world or whatever.
It's a dignified anger.
Yes.
Yeah.
I find,
Yeah, that's true. But I still think like there's a more evolved stance than that one that I aspire to. But, you know, I think there's also something about feeling like you've made good work, which I feel, you know, whether it's right or not, I feel it, that makes you kind of like, I don't know, more confident or more at peace, you know? Like maybe if I thought all my films were bad, I would be more bitter.
Right.
And I would have less faith.
And you like all of your films.
I love my films.
Yeah.
I just love them.
Your podcast from today talks about hitting the line when you're playing tennis, like the ball hitting the line and the sublime feeling that comes from that. And it does feel like every time you've made something and felt good about releasing it, it does, like I'm like, Caveh feels that it hit the line here.
Yeah, I do.
Which is great, which I feel like it's you can't say that from almost anybody's body of work. Like there's some misses in there, or like something got messed up, there's a compromise made. And I think maybe at the level that you're making movies, that in a bit, like you've protected not having to compromise a lot, which I think is special. And I think most people, as they maybe get more successful and there's more money involved, there's more compromises involved, which is why the work suffers.
Right. And maybe if I'd been more successful, I would have compromised more too.
Yeah.
You know, or maybe that's the cost of success is compromise. And, you know, maybe I just never wanted to pay that cost.
Yeah.
But also, you know, I could say, oh, I'm such a moral guy, I don't compromise, but it's also just a personality thing. Like, I just can't stand it.
Yeah.
You know, it's arguably a kind of immaturity or a kind of, you know, infantile.
Like stubbornness.
Refusal of reality and interpersonal reality, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's any merit in it. I just know that it kills me to do it.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have, you know, whatever version of success I have now and a sense of, you know, integrity, you know, personal integrity to myself than that other thing, which just feels worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
Well, again, it's the Morrissey thing that you bring up of your concerns become different as you become more successful. And it's not just success. I guess it could be your concerns become different as you get older and your life circumstances change, whatever. But I feel you have a kind of spiritual goal in everything you do. And that is kind of inherently, you know, pure, for lack of a better word. So if you don't lose that spirituality, the work doesn't suffer. And maybe that's what a lot of people lose, the kind of wonder of the sublime and like the reason why they're even doing what they do.
Yeah, I think most people aren't on a spiritual path, really.
Yeah.
Or they're not serious about it.
Right. I agree.
And so I don't know why I am serious about it, but I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can tell that I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of my drug stuff a lot of it comes from my drug stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I was before the drug stuff.
Yeah.
But the drug stuff always reminds me of it and feels like home base. You know, like, okay, this is not about me. It's about something much bigger.
Right.
So, and it's a great gift. I don't know how I got that. I think I probably earned that in a previous lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, I'm grateful to whatever past life I had that gave me that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am serious about it, and I'm trying, and I think we all are really, but a lot of us are more focused on some kind of ego trip than that.
Yeah. I think that it's funny because you definitely get criticized for being an egotist in a lot of ways, but I feel like you see people and have faith in people more than most people. I think in that way, it's actually your work is way less egotistical than most things.
Yeah, I think so too, but I think it appears more egotistical.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's you doing a camera dress.
Because people have such a limited, narrow notion of what ego is and what spirituality is.
I totally agree. We've talked about this before, the kind of the way that self-indulgent gets thrown around as a criticism, but that term is not even really being engaged with, and how I've talked about how I think the people who are described as humble are oftentimes the most self-absorbed in a negative way, people that I've ever met. And I think the kind of way that self-absorption is looked at in art is very skewed for the most part.
Yeah, and in film, it's weirdly, there are different sets of rules for film than for like literature.
Right.
Like, nobody has a problem with Knausgaard or Proust.
Right.
Or almost any poet.
Yeah.
And yet people have a huge problem with you making a film by yourself.
Right.
Unless you fit certain categories.
Right. And unless, you really, attain nirvana, that's how you relate to the world, is through your own experience and how different things have affected you. That's how you see others based on your own experience. And it's a necessary thing to be warm and open to people, I think. To be that kind of, to think about yourself that much is actually a way to connect with people greater.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know how other people do it. I mean, do they not think about themselves?
Right. I have the same.
They must be lying.
Right.
Because who walks around thinking about other people all the time?
Right.
Nobody.
Not Gandhi.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you want to relate to a person's plight or what they're trying to say, you do that through your own experience and how you've experienced the world and things that you have to go inside yourself to relate to other people. So I think in that way, a kind of self-absorption, if you could even call it that, is a healthy thing.
Yeah, I took an African drumming class once, and remember the teacher was saying, like, you got to learn the beat that you're doing, and you got to not lose it. So you got to stay with your own beat.
Right.
But you also have to hear the other person's beat and be receptive to it, because you can't just do your thing regardless of what they're doing. You have to do it in sync with them.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But if you listen to their thing too hard, you lose your beat.
Yeah.
And it's this process, as a beginner at least,
right,
of constantly like losing your own beat because you're listening too hard,
right,
or then losing their beat because you're trying to stay in your beat.
Right.
And that little balance that's so hard to find, so ineffable and intangible, and you're always losing it.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to me like the proper balance between self and other.
Right.
Which we're always failing to capture
and
losing. And sometimes I'm a little too self-absorbed, sometimes a little too receptive.
Yeah.
And if I'm too receptive, like I lose my own thing, which I need,
Yeah.
And I become decentered and I become crazy.
Right.
But if I'm too in like what I need, I'm not sensitive to you. And so it's just a delicate dance that we're always trying to find interpersonally and cinematically too.
Yeah.
But you need a certain amount of me for that to work properly.
And not trying to hold back because you feel like it's what you're supposed to do or something.
Right.
And the drumming example you bring up is interesting, because when I was in college, I was in a free jazz ensemble. And it was really interesting to me how much I learned, not only philosophically, but as a musician, everything from that. Where there's no score, there's no key. It's not you're not playing with other people in the same way as any other music ensemble. And through that, I became a much better listener as a musician, but I think that can apply in lots of ways. You still have to contribute. You're still playing an instrument. You have to add, and you want to add to this song that's being created, but there's no narrative in your head because you're not following a staff. You're not following a piece.
Yeah, script.
You're listening and going off of what you hear. So you are thinking about yourself because you have to be a part of it. But when you're not following a script, you become a much better listener
Yeah,
and a better contributor.
Yeah, I really love that Blake quote about better to suffocate a baby in its crib than to nurse an unfulfilled desire or unexpressed desire.
Right.
Like I really think desire is holy.
Yeah.
And I think one of my biggest regrets, my only regrets, are when I want to say something and I don't.
Yeah.
And whatever it is, it might be like, oh, I like your shirt, or it might be like, you hurt my feelings. Whatever it is, like there is something spontaneous and true and of God that emerged.
Right.
And you just sat there and let it go.
Yeah.
It's like that Morrissey song again, like sing your life, all the things you love, all the things you loathe. Like all of that is now. It's happening right now. And if you don't express it, you kind of failed to be true to the moment.
Yeah.
And so I'm always just increasingly, as I get older, because I'm sort of more and more regretful of all the times I didn't, I just try to say the thing. And it makes life so much richer and funner, because every time you do that, your life force goes up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And every time you don't do it, your life force goes down.
Right.
Yeah.
And it makes it's like I was saying earlier, it makes the two-way thing work stronger. If you break that down with someone, they'll break it down. And it becomes a way more open coming from both directions.
Yeah.
I find it's kind of amazing how willing people are to break that down. If you say, "Oh, I really like your stuff. I really like your shirt," even they'll come right back at you with something, and it feels good. It's such an invitation to connect with someone more when you just do that.
Right. Some people are like, "Ooh, I don't know you."
Yeah, but those people, I think, have some kind of block that they need to get over.
Well, the stigma around it is that it's not cool or something, or like you're not in, or like there's not. People aren't comfortable doing it because it doesn't feel elegant or something.
I would say 9 times out of 10 people are receptive.
No, they certainly are.
I agree.
Yeah.
And when they're not, it's because somehow they have an identity, ego thing happening it's threatening.
Right.
And then making them feel bad about themselves. And they're like, I don't like this feeling you're making me have right now.
Right.
Do you still feel that you are receptive to people's, praising your work or asking you to do things for you? Like, what's your relationship with people who follow your work and contact you cold or come up to you at a screening, or like, are you still receptive and open to that dialogue?
I mean, I like it. I think people often walk away from that encounter feeling like they embarrassed themselves or that I was annoyed.
Right.
When I wasn't. So I think I do a bad job of making them feel embraced.
Right.
I'm friends with Alison Anders, the filmmaker, and I once saw her after Q&A, and she was so good at not doing that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And she would do this thing. She would say, "Oh, thank you." She would take their hand, and she'd say, "What's your name?" And they tell them, and she would like look in their eyes, just say, "Thank you so much."
Yeah.
And she just like gave them their love back. And I was like, wow, I wish I could be that good.
She's good at it. Yeah. Well, some people are really great at it. It's almost like that they train themselves. Like, how are they so good at this?
Politician shit. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Who else is great is Kirsten Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
She's so good. And it's authentic. I mean, she's a loving person.
She's nice. Girl.
She's so nice.
Yeah.
And she's just like, I don't know. It's like she takes everything to a really high level right away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a hard time letting in love, actually. I kind of feel like I don't deserve it or something, and I sort of shut down a little bit.
Right.
So I mean, I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my default.
Yeah. I think actors can be good at it too. I remember my dad embarrassed me one time and walked up to Ethan Hawke and was like talking to him about, it was like before Midnight or one of those movies. And I was just like, oh my God, this is gonna be so embarrassing. Because I was like, my dad has nothing interesting to say to him. I was like, it's gonna suck. And Ethan Hawke was like, my dad was the only person in the universe in that 5 minutes that they were talking. I was like, holy shit, why is Ethan Hawke talking to my dad like this? And he did seem genuinely interested, but I was like, he is also a pretty good actor. I was like, maybe I don't know, I'm just suspicious of people being so accepting of people walking up to people cold. It's amazing to me when it happens though, and it is something to aspire to for sure. I was just curious if that's changed over time for you, or if...
I think I'm a little better at it than I used to be, but I'm still not great at it.
Yeah.
But you're still equally kind of interested / appreciative, or...
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, lately people often reach out to me and offer to help out on the shows or on the films, and I almost always say sure.
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to take time away from the work to like get coffee with people.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to hang out with them in the context of doing something
of doing the work.
productive.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me, it's like a perfect way of interacting with people and getting work done.
Do you still do that with like a kind of like a revolving?
Yeah, I've got like 20 people right now.
Like editing and
yeah. And I got like too many because it's just like it's hard to slot them all in.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like my introduction to film editing in a lot of ways, was like your house and just like seeing people come and go and work on editing. I always thought that was fascinating. And I was curious. I mean, I think it was also interesting to me because like I did get the sense that like maybe people would give their own takes on edits and things, but ultimately like I felt like you were still probably changing things later, or you still had so much control. I was like, I don't even really think he's using a lot of this.
Sometimes I don't agree with something and I'm just like, really? Okay. And then I'll ask someone else, do you think this is, and then if they say no, I'm like, yeah, I don't think so either. But if they say yeah, then I'm like, oh, maybe there is a consensus here
Right.
that I'm not seeing. So it's helpful for me to get, data points.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I personally love as many people getting involved with my creative process as I can, even though I still ultimately go with my instinct over anything anyone would ever say to me. I still think I listen and appreciate and want to hear. I'm not like, no, my way, I'm going to block this out. I still will probably go with myself, but I do genuinely think that there's great value in having other people involved. Sometimes the simplest things you can't see because you have a different relationship to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you work on the earlier films with less people?
Yeah.
Because the show about the show feels so accessible in a way that it feels very, and like I know you have lots of screenings for people and you test it all the time. And I think it's, I think it's probably like I mean, like I love all your movies, but it feels like the masterwork in a lot of ways because it kind of balances like accessibility with the search for the transcendent, like honesty, like it just kind of is a good synthesis of everything.
Yeah. It has the most people have worked on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of cooks in that kitchen.
Yeah.
Here's a question that I had, slightly changing the subject here, but
No, just I have to pick up my son very soon.
Okay.
But let's do one more.
Okay. Something that interested me about I don't hate Las Vegas anymore was you seemed to some degree at the end of the film like satisfied with whatever you had found, but you seemed to not have any answers to the kind of questions that you had in the beginning. So I guess my question is really, or it's not even a question as much as I would love to hear you talk more about how important or not important you find finding answers to things. And should that even be the goal? Is there more to be found in the process?
The Vegas film?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Or just in general, but I think it's most on display there.
Yeah, I guess I don't believe in answers really. I mean, I think there's just like a temporary answer for this moment.
Right.
And then the next moment is like a different problem with a different answer. So you're just kind of moving through these shifting questions and shifting answers.
Yeah.
And I do think the process is the thing, and enjoying that process and listening to what the universe is sort of telling you. But that film was sort of like, can you trust God to like, can you surrender the process to God? Mm-hmm. And I think the answer was, yeah, you can. And the film felt to me like a demonstration of that thing. And it wasn't what you thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the question was it going to work? Like, was it going to be not boring? And I think it wasn't boring.
Right.
And so in that sense, God did his or her thing.
And there's the double exposure moment where it feels like God's here.
Right. Although it felt at first like it was the devil.
Right.
Which is always what it is. It's always like, I think this is the devil. And like, nope, it's God.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what I got from that film was that, yes, questions are worth asking, but not to find the answer. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, if anybody said they had the answer, I would, I think I'd run screaming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Only gurus have the answer, and they're not real answers.
So
yeah, you're a great question. You're a great questionnaire. Like you ask great questions, and I think you open up the possibility of the idea of an answer for people who watch your stuff. Like I feel relief after I watch your movies for some reason, and I think everybody else does too.
Yeah. I agree. That's why I used the word warm earlier. Actually, an anecdote I always think about is our mutual friend, Sam Stillman, told me that he watched all of your films in one go, standing up. Which I think about.
Which I believe.
Which I 100% believe. And I think is actually, I think, besides Sam being Sam, there's actually something really interesting there because I don't think most filmmakers you could watch all of their films standing up.
He was probably jumping up and down, right?
I think he just maybe didn't have a chair in the room. I mean, we'll let you go if you have
Okay,
to
yeah,
go.
I should run. I've got a parking.
Thank you for doing
meter
this,
and-
Caveh. Cave's got. Do you have something? Is there something new in the works that we can?
I made a film this summer in London, which I'm excited about.
Can't say anything about it, but
I'm not sure what the title is. Right now, the title is "The Trees Were Spelling Love Backwards," and I wrote a book, which is coming out.
wow.
They're currently asking me to cut a bunch of it out, so I'm just grappling with those censorship demands.
Right.
That's all I got really.
All right.
And the show about the show,
Well,
you can watch it. You can watch the existing seasons if you haven't already. We encourage everyone listening to watch.
And we'd love to help you find a
Yes.
place to
if you
land the
if you think of
season
anything,
3. Yeah.
Yeah, we're both. I mean, that he's a huge show about the show fan, but I'm a huge show about the show fan. So yeah, if there's anything we could do,
We got
obviously.
some connections.
yeah. I mean, if you think of anything, I just can't think of who would be the right home for it at the moment.
What's your dream?
I mean, I don't know. Netflix,
HBO.
HBO, Netflix,
Yeah.
the usual suspects.
Yeah.
But it'd be nice, some like brand new, cool,
Yeah.
Yeah,
controversial,
Yeah.
not,
We'll start a streaming service.
that would be great.
Yeah. I'm actually serious.
yeah. That's the next step.
Well, Caveh, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. It was
Yes,
really
thank you.
nice talking to you
Yeah,
guys.
you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.